Today I'm going to walk you through how AI agents can be used to automate risk in project management, and more importantly, how this changes the way we identify, monitor, and respond to risk in real time. So I want you to think about traditional risk management for a moment. Usually risk is treated as something static. We create a risk register at the beginning of the project, maybe updated during milestones, and hope nothing major changes in between. What AI allows us to do is flip that model completely. Instead of a risk being a one-time or periodic activity, it becomes something that is continuously monitored, predicted, and proactively managed by intelligent systems. So I'll explain what that looks like in practice, show how an AI risk agent functions, and then demonstrate a mock scenario to make it feel a little bit more real and applicable to projects you might actually manage. So let's start with how risk management traditionally works. In most projects, risk management follows a 4-step cycle. First, the team identifies potential risks, often during kickoff or periodic review meetings, and these risks might be things like schedule delays, supplier issues, budget overruns, or weather impacts. Second, the team analyzes each risk by estimating probability and impact, usually assigning values like low, medium, or high based on experience or intuition. And third, mitigation plans are created, typically documented in a risk register. And finally, the risks are monitored periodically, often during status meetings or reporting cycles. So while this process looks structured on paper, in practice it has some serious limitations. Risk identification is often delayed until problems become visible, and scoring relies heavily on subjective human judgment, which introduces bias and inconsistency. Updates occur slowly because they depend on manual input, but most importantly, decisions become reactive instead of proactive. By the time a risk is recognized as critical, the damage has already often started. So here's a list of where traditional systems usually fail. So they are identified too late, there's no real-time monitoring, and there's a lack of predictive capability. So this is where AI agents will come in. An AI agent in this context is an autonomous digital system that continuously monitors project data, analyzes patterns, and takes action based on real-time insights. So instead of waiting for a project manager to manually update a risk log, the AI agent is constantly observing key inputs such as schedule variance, vendor performance, budget trends, communication patterns, and external signals like weather forecasts or supply chain disruptions. So think of the AI agent as an always-on risk analyst that never gets tired, never forgets, and never relies solely on gut instinct. So it interprets data, calculates probabilities, and updates risk assessments dynamically. So here's how the AI-driven risk management flow works in practice. So first, the system collects project data. This includes timeline metrics, cost data, performance reports, supplier lead times, and even communication logs to detect shifts in tone or urgency. Second, this data is processed by the AI brain, where machine learning models and language models identify emerging risk patterns. And third, the AI predicts risk likelihood and severity using statistical models and not just subjective guesswork. And fourth, it generates mitigation suggestions automatically. And lastly, it pushes live updates to a risk dashboard that project managers can act on instantly. So we'll walk through a concrete example. So imagine we're working on an infrastructure project where the system detects 3 signals simultaneously. Supplier lead times have increased by 18%, material costs have risen by 11% compared to the baseline, and severe weather has been forecasted during a critical construction phase. So in a traditional system, these might exist as separate pieces of information scattered across reports, but an AI agent will be able to connect these dots, and it will generate a risk output that we'll see on the next slide. But right now, we'll be able to summarize the AI response. It shows that the delay probability increases to 63%, so it recommends a buffer extension as well as alternative suppliers, as well as adjusting the timeline forecast. And you can see in the white box below, it outputs exactly what you need to read, simply and explicitly. So here's the exact output that the AI console will output. You can read it on the left, but on the right, it gives out the exact code that it used to kind of summarize all the data. So the system explains why this risk is increasing on the right side, and it identifies contributing signals such as 3 late shipments from supplier A in the past 60 days, and the flooding risk at the primary shipping port based on weather API data, as well as a schedule variance on materials packages on plus 12 days. So instead of leaving the manager to decide what to do next, the AI provides actionable recommendations, such as adding a 2-week buffer to foundation work or secondary supplier frameworks, and it even calculates projected outcomes if these actions are accepted, such as reducing the delay probability from 63% to 28%. So this isn't just automation, it's decision intelligence. So from the perspective of a project manager, this really changes the role entirely. Instead of spending hours collecting data and estimating probabilities and manually updating risk logs, the manager is more of a strategic decision maker that interprets AI insights. So their time shifts from administrative risk tracking to high-level planning and stakeholder communication. So the benefits are very substantial. So first, decision making becomes much faster because risks are identified early and evaluated instantly. And second, risks become data-driven instead of more intuitive. And third, bias is reduced because the AI uses consistent logic across all scenarios. And fourth, monitoring happens in real time rather than during reviews. And lastly, project leaders will be able to gain the ability to focus on priorities instead of constantly firefighting. However, whenever it comes into conversation of AI, it's important to discuss limitations and ethics. They are only as good as the data that they receive. So if the data is incomplete or inaccurate, predictions can become unreliable. And there's also a lot of risk of over-reliance where teams may defer judgment entirely to the systems. Transparency is another issue, and if project managers don't understand how the AI reaches its conclusions, trust can erode. So, therefore, I think the ideal model is a hybrid. AI supports the decision-making process, but humans retain final authority. So, AI will act as an advisor and not a replacement. When implemented responsibly, this approach can transform risk management from a static checklist into pretty much a living system. Instead of reacting to risks after they occur, teams will be able to gain the ability to anticipate, prepare, and adapt in advance. So to summarize, AI agents elevate risk management by continuously monitoring project data and detecting weak signals before they are even able to escalate, such as the likelihood and impact with all of greater accuracy. So this shift from reactive to predictive risk management will strengthen project resilience, improve outcomes, and empower project managers to operate with greater confidence and clarity. Thank you.